Hey guys, today we are on Revelations chapter 6. Now, when we get to 6, it is the beginning of what we call the tribulation, the 7 years that God will pull back. He will bring his wrath to this earth. And so we kind of get chapter 6 is kind of like a summary view of it. And then as you read past 6, we'll get more details about that. So there's a lot that happens, but this is kind of a 7 year span, right? And so after we read this, we'll start filling in some of the holes. And so it goes back to the scroll in the throne room, right? Throne room was chapter 4. The scroll was chapter 5. Now in chapter 6, we see that Jesus is opening the scroll. Remember, the scroll had 7 seals, 7 wax seals. So with every seal that he opens, we get another event. We get something that happens as it gets closer and closer to being opened and can be read. So John starts out in verse 1. I watched that the Lamb, Jesus, opened one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures, this is one of the cherubim that we've seen back in the throne room, say with a voice like thunder, come, or come and see, or go forth. Okay, all those means the same thing, but basically go forth. And I looked, and behold, a white horse! Exclamation point! And its rider had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he came out conquering and to conquer. Now, for those of you who like cowboy movies, when you see a white horse, it means it's the good guy, right? Not in this case, not in Revelations. This is what we would call the Antichrist. This is the fake Christ. He looks good, but he is really not. And so we can see that this is not Jesus. Revelation 19 gives us a little bit more of that detail, but it's the definitely the Antichrist. And he has a bow and a crown. So a crown, he's a ruler. He's going to rule the world. And he has a bow. Notice this, a bow, not a sword. Why would that be? A sword, you can only kill what's immediately around you. A bow is called a long-range weapon, which means that this ruler is going to have a long range. He's going to be able to basically rule the world. And so he comes out on the white horse, the Antichrist. Then he opened the second seal, and I heard the second living creature say, go forth, come. And out came another horse, and this horse was bright red. Think of blood. Its rider was permitted to take peace from the earth so that the people should slay one another, and he was given a great sword. So the second rider is red blood because he's bringing war. When we think of these horses, if you've ever read Revelation, you probably have thought about these, and you might think, man, war? But notice what happens. He doesn't bring war, he takes peace. Okay, there's a difference, right? He doesn't bring war, he takes peace. Right now, we think we live in a horrible world, and it's true. This world is not our home, but this world still is maintained and grace and mercy poured on it all the time that keeps us from killing one another. That's just a part of God being grace and mercy, even in a sinful world, even for sinful people. But here, notice what it says, that this writer was permitted to take peace. God allowed him, just like the story in Job, that God gives permission. All things happen because God allows it. God gives permission to take peace. He didn't bring war, he took peace. And when he took God's mercy and blessings and grace away, what happens? Men do what they do best. They slay one another. The third seal, he opened the third seal, and I heard the third living creature say, come or go forth. And I looked, and behold, it was a black horse. So we have a white horse with the Antichrist, a red horse with war, and now we have a black horse that is famine, right? After war, there's always famine because everybody gets killed, everybody gets hurt, farms get trampled, no way to put food in factories of that sort. So whenever there is war, there is always famine. And this black horse has a pair of scales in his hand, right? A scale, like, what's heavier and what's not, giving the idea that they must weigh or ration out their food. And I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius, or 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and the wine. Now, we don't have denariuses today, but what you need to know is that's about 12 times the price of wheat and barley. So what does that mean? It means a day's work for just the ingredients to make 1 loaf of bread. That's what it means. So you would work all day at your job, and you would come back and you could get the ingredients. You still had to go home and break the bread, right, and prepare it and mix it. So in my lifetime, I think of Argentina. I think of all these communist countries who a wheelbarrow's worth of money wouldn't buy a loaf of bread. And so we can see now, even in our lifetime, how this would be made possible. We see it every day in countries around the world. And so even for goofy people in America who want America to be communist, right? So crazy. But notice what it says. It says, do not harm the oil and the wine. The nicer things will be left for the rich people. For the people who can afford it, right? So common man will struggle to survive, while the rich and wealthy, the elite, those who are on the side of the Antichrist, will be able to afford and be able to eat of the nicer things. Verse 7, we see the 4th seal. I heard a voice in the 4th living creature saying, come and go, come and see. And I looked, and behold, a pale horse. Think of like green, right? Like a green sickly, a sickly horse, and its rider's name was Death, and Hades and hell followed him. So the 4th horse is Death, and they were given authority. Notice that God gave them the authority over the 4th of the earth. So even if it was to come today, think of just in this short time, 2 billion people would die because of war, because of famine, right? That's a whole lot of people. To kill with sword and with famine and with pestilence and the wild beasts of the earth. Now we have the 5th seal. When he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar of souls of those who had been slain for the word of God and for their witness that they had borne. Now this idea of altars of souls kind of goes back to Leviticus chapter 4, where the priest would put blood on the horns of the altar. Then they would take the rest of the blood and pour it at the base of the altar. People kind of argue about what this is, okay? Not really what it is, who it is. And so I saw under the altar of souls those who had been slain for the word of God. So we would say martyrs, people who died for God, for the word of God. They are under this. The thing that is argued is that, is it just the martyrs of the tribulation or martyrs of all time? I tend to believe that it's martyrs from all time, okay? Not just during the tribulation, but martyrs throughout all time. Either way, it's martyrs, people who stood for God. And they cried out with a loud voice, O sovereign Lord, holy and true, how long before you judge and avenge our God? These martyrs are crying out for justice, right? They're crying out for God for vengeance on people who killed them. And they were each given a white robe. They were each giving righteousness and told to rest a little longer until the number of their fellow servants and their brothers should be complete, who are to be killed as they themselves have been. Notice this. God knows exactly the number of people who will die for him. It's crazy, right? We say God knows everything. He does. And so he tells them, I will avenge your death. I will bring justice. But wait a little bit longer, because there's more people who's going to die for my name. And just let me wait for everybody, and then I will avenge their death all in one time. Then verse 12. This is the Ghostbuster passage. If you watch Ghostbusters, you know what I mean. It says, then he opened the sixth seal. I looked, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black like sackcloth. Full moon became like blood, and the stars of the sky fell on the earth as a fig tree sheds its winter fruit when is shaken by a gale. And the sky vanished like a scroll that is being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from this place. Notice this is a big cosmological event, and even earthly event. Lots of things are going to happen. But what's interesting is anytime we read the Old Testament, okay, anytime you read the Old Testament and you read about the moons becoming like blood, the skies becoming like black, the stars are falling, anytime that event happens, it's always talking about when the Messiah will come. Read Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Job, Zephaniah. Even in the words of Jesus in the book of Matthew, we see that these kind of events mean that Jesus is coming back. It is the Messiah coming back. Not only that, then the kings of the earth, verse 15, and the great ones and the generals and the rich and the powerful and everyone, slave and free, hid themselves in the cave among the rocks of the mountains, calling to the mountains and the rocks. Every person is going under the wrath of God. Every person. There is the rich, the poor, the free. It doesn't matter. Everybody is getting poured on and being hurt in this event. And so much that they go and hide in the mountains and caves, and they cry out to the caves that they should fall on them and hide us. Notice this. What should they hide from? They want the caves to collapse to hide them from the face of him who is seated on the throne. They want to hide not just from the wrath that's going on, but they want to be hid from the face of God. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who can stand? The wrath is bad, but even the lost people know the day that they stand before God will be even worse than what they are going through the tribulation. So they're even asking the caves to collapse to hide them from the wrath and from the face or the judgment of God. But notice what happens in the very last verse. For the great day of wrath has come, and who can stand? That's the great question. There is going to be an end. And at the end, who can stand? It is only those who believe in Jesus with all their heart, mind, soul, and strength, right? Who put their faith in Jesus Christ. They're the only people that will stand before the throne and being put onto the right side and being told to enter in, good and faithful servant. Hope that makes sense. We will see you tomorrow on chapter 7. God bless.